Hi, welcome to this demo session on SAP Workflow. This demo is divided into three parts. In the first part, we are going to look at what are the prerequisites. In the second part, I would like to introduce you what a business process is and how we can redefine a business process by using SAP Workflows in any SAP system. And finally, I would like to show you a simple demo. So in the first part, what are the points that we are going to look at is who are the target audience or who can become a participants of this SAP Workflow training program, and then what are the prerequisites as a participant you should meet, and then what kind of expectations and what kind of content that you can expect from this SAP Workflow training program. And we'll also try to make you understand about the learning approach and getting hands-on with the SAP Workflow development process. And we would like to highlight the main objective of this whole SAP Workflow training program, making you understand about what is the delivery method. And additionally, I also try to share you the whole course content, including the advanced topics in a very detailed point-to-point concepts. And finally, I would like to, before I conclude this demo session, I would like to show you a simple demo. So as you can see, we can have as a SAP consultant, irrespective of what kind of role you actually hold, being as a technical consultant, being a functional consultant, or being a part of a support team, all the three consultants, irrespective of what role you actually hold, you can just take advantage of this program for understanding SAP Workflow. And what are the prerequisites that we actually expect is that, as a participant, you should be at least aware of some of the minimum your development units which are involved in the process of getting understand what ABAP is and how we develop reports, or how we enhance standard transactions, or how we can make use of or how we can create table maintenance generators, and how we can make use of customer exits, and how to identify different customer exits and business add-ins within the specific process or transaction. So we would expect that you have a good understanding of all the concepts, whatever that I just highlighted. And in fact, it would be an added advantage if you are aware of what object-oriented programming is and how we can make use of this object-oriented methodology within ABAP. In the process, we also expect that you have a minimum understanding of data dictionary processes and developments. Basically, there are some concepts which we had to use in SAP Workflow training program to make you understand the different concepts. So in this process, we also try to make use of some of the data dictionary elements in building SAP Workflow or in redefining a business process. And these are some of the areas that or expertise that we consider as a participant. You are already aware of this from technical point of view, but as a functional consultant or as a part of support team, we expect that you have a good understanding of what a business process is. When you talk about a business process, or when you are holding a role of functional consultant, obviously we expect that you are aware of the whole end-to-end business process, and what are the different levels and stages that are involved in the business process, who are the different people involved in the business process. So we expect that you have a good understanding of what a business process and with respect to the business process, it can be relevant to any specific SAP application component, irrespective of whether it can be from logistics, or it can be from financials, or it can be from HR, or it can be from SRM or CRM. Irrespective of what business suite application or what R3 application component you are working with, we expect that you have a good understanding of end-to-end process of the whole application component. So in this way, it would be really helpful to make use or to leverage the functionalities and features of SAP Workflow by integrating SAP Workflow with the existing org structure or the business process. So what can you expect from the course? Whenever during the process of development of this SAP Workflow training, we had come across so many questions like what kind of what kind of things or what kind of content that really people as a participant expects. So during this process we just try to analyze some of the points that make sense, and what we thought of that, instead of just going through some set of PPT slides or running through some slides, what we thought of that, whenever we just try to introduce any new concept, we made sure that within the workflow we made sure that each and every detailed information with respect to that concept has been provided, and then next to that we made sure that whatever the concept that we introduced, we may try to apply and implement through step-by-step process. And at the same time we just try to even compare the situations or the use case with some of the real-time scenarios, so that it can helpful us to compare and correlate with the existing R3 applications and business processes. And in this process, what we also try to give you is that some sort of tips and tricks in engaging and at the same time in implementing or redefining a business process by using SAP workflows. So in this process, what happened is that there were some concepts that are very crucial in understanding and redefining a business process by using SAP workflow. So whenever we felt that the concept or the topic, whatever that we are going to discuss, has an impact on the business process, so for that concept we just try to give enough amount of time to make you understand all the points, all the attributes and all the activities that are involved with the concept. So in this way you can expect that it would be a very detailed approach and a step-by-step implementation of the whole concept, and at the same time comparing it with some real-time use cases, following with the tips and tricks. So as you know that once you have decided to go with SAP workflow training program, and it's obviously at the end of the training or at the end of the program, one should whoever be the participant is we expect that he should be well versed with all the processes and activities that are involved in the process of developing SAP workflows or integrating SAP workflows with R3 applications. So what we thought of that is that to just highlight some of the points about what kind of methodology or in which way you have to approach this whole program, is that we just try to make sure that whatever the content that is really important to make you understand what a workflow is, so we just try to provide everything in the videos, and what we expect is that you just try to follow all the videos, watch them and follow each and every video and session carefully. And in this during the session we just try to provide so many important information. So whatever the information that you feel important, and if anything which is very new to you as a participant, so I would expect that you just try to make a note of these notes and maintain a sort of notes about the important points and concepts with respect to the SAP workflow. And once you are just try to follow the sessions, whatever the steps that we just try to follow or create in the process of making you understand about the concept, so just try to repeat the same steps so that you can get hands-on, so you will be able to understand the development process or the activities that are involved in including or developing or defining a business process by using SAP workflow. It's not about just following the videos only for the one time. I would always suggest or recommend that it's the learning process, the way in which we are just trying to understand what a workflow is by self-learning process. So in the self-learning methodology, I would always recommend that just try to go through the videos again and again, so that it would be really helpful for you to understand the concept or the SAP workflow system in detail. It might happen that for the first time you might won't be able to understand the whole things, but obviously the recursive learning process will help you to get things more clear and clear as you just go on revisit the sessions and videos again and again. So finally, upon doing all the above activities, what I would recommend or suggest is that you try to visualize yourself, consider a simple or a sample use case from within the R3 applications. Visualize yourself a dummy use case, or it can be a real-time use case also, and try to implement this business process. Now, whatever that you just try to visualize, or just try to think about any specific application component process. So just try to redefine them by making use of SAP workflow. So the main objective of this course is that it's not just about following the slides, or it's not just about running through all the PPTs, or just a theoretical approach. Maybe what we thought of that, instead of giving you an introduction to the concept, we felt that a practical approach will be more helpful as a participant to understand what are the different activities that are involved in the development process of SAP workflow. And at the same time, we just try to make sure that whenever we trying to make you understand the different processes of or operations that are involved in development process of SAP workflow, we try to compare everything with a business process. So the crucial part, or the crucial point here, is to understand what a business process is. So until and unless you get a fair amount of understanding of what a business process is and what are the different components or levels that are involved in the business process, so obviously you won't be able to understand or redefine or make use of SAP workflow in integrating with the existing or new business processes. So what we try to do is that every time we just try to provide you a kind of business process, and then we just try to apply the same concepts, the same legacy business process, by making use of SAP workflow. And in this process, obviously, when we just try to rebuild or redefine the business process by making use of SAP workflow, there are some points, there are some instances where we fell into some error-prone states. So obviously, it would help us to understand how we can fix some errors. So obviously, troubleshooting is one of the important area. Again, when we think about SAP workflows, when these workflows or the developments are moved into the production system, obviously from the production point of view, the troubleshooting would have more significance rather than development. So obviously we also try to provide you troubleshooting techniques. Upon understanding all these, what a business process is and how we can make use of different components of SAP workflow, and how we can make use of different troubleshooting techniques, we just try to implement all these concepts by using different applications and of R3, and we just try to integrate our existing workflows by existing R3. At the same time, we also try to create new applications and new workflows. So that was the main objective of the course. It's the main objective I would say that it's not just about just giving you the technical information, but it's about understanding from the functional point of view also. So the delivery approach, as I said, what we just try to follow the approaches like before we start implementing or making use of workflows within the R3 system or different business processes. What we thought of that, we just try to give you or introduce you a new concept within the workflow, and how we can make use of this new concept in any of the business processes. And then whatever the configurations or settings that are really required in understanding the concept, we just did all the set of configurations. We just try to provide you all the set of configurations, like for instance, if I have to understand how I can configure extended notifications, or how I can send a notification or email or a sort of email to some external domain address whenever a new business process is initiated. So obviously there are some set of configurations that has to be performed. So what we did is that we just try to first make you understand what is extended notifications, or and then how we can make use of these extended notifications within SAP system. So in this process, what happens is that we had to do some set of configurations in some of the SAP provided tools and tables. So we have tried to show you all these configurations, and then finally what we did is, like, once we have done all the respective and relevant configurations and settings within the SAP system, we tried to implement and apply the concept within the system. So as I said, I just tried to give you the course content of this SAP workflow. As you can see that the whole course content as I just tried to give you each and every point and each and every concept, whatever that we discussed within the whole training program of SAP workflow. So as you can see, we just tried to start with a workflow introduction, and then obviously anyways the whole and sole purpose of this whole training program is of applying or implementing the SAP workflow within the legacy or existing business processes. So in this process we just try to make you understand what are the different modeling tools, and what are the different tools that we can make use of, workflow builder, or workflows that can help us to redefine the business process. So workflow builder, creating workflow template. Yeah, as you can see that I'll just like take you through all the course contents, each and every slide. So you just go through the slides, that is what I expect. And these are some of the advanced topics that we have given some importance. The reason is that because in the real-time scenarios, it is not just about understanding what a step is and what are the different activities or what are the different components that are involved in the workflow, but at the same time we felt that it is more important to correlate with the real-time scenarios. So that is the reason why these are some of the advanced topics that we have discussed within the training program. So as you can see that in the advanced topics, the first one would be obviously creating attachments. So most of the times we come across these kind of requirements, like some user or customer might expect a kind of attachment or PDF attachment to the work item, which will be sent to his inbox or placed in his inbox. And at the same time, as I said, whenever any new business process is initiated or governed by using SAP workflow, so in that case, if they are expecting some sort of notifications to their external domain or internal user, SAP user, so how do you do that? So that is the reason why I said, like, it is out of box. So out of box can be your either external address, it can be your Outlook company organizational domain address, or it can be some Gmail or Yahoo, any external domain. And then we just try to give you good understanding of what a universal work list is and how we can make use of this universal work list in in pulling and executing the different activities that are involved in the business process. And change document objects, obviously that is one of the important things. So how we can integrate workflows by change document objects. And also we try to make you understand how we can map or associate different workflow objects with the existing or new organizational structure or hierarchy. We also try to highlight how we can integrate workflows with BRF Plus and HR and FI application components. These are just simple these were some of the application components that I just tried to consider in developing the workflow content. But however, the steps or the process or the activities remain same when we try to even integrate it with either a SRM or CRM systems or any other business suite applications. And we also try to make you understand what are the different workflow wizards that are involved in the development process. So wizards, there are some set of wizards which can help us to reduce the development time. So we also thought of that, these wizards can be really helpful in the real-time use cases. So we try to highlight even some of the workflow wizards and how we can make use of workflow wizards and what is the information that it expects when we execute these wizards. We also try to highlight how we can integrate or how we can develop sub workflows and program exits. There are some program exits that are involved in the workflow development process. So we also considered these program exits as one of the important area in understanding and in redefining a business process by making use of SAP workflow. We also not only just try to highlight about static parallel processing, but also we try to highlight about dynamic parallel processing also. There are some activities that can be handled with the workflows. For example, as you can see that work item display and work item preview. Using of secondary methods, again there are whenever we are trying to use secondary methods, there are two approaches, a model and model call or model invocation process. So we just try to show you where we can do that and how we can do this and what are the prerequisites that are required or needed whenever we have to make use of the secondary methods within the workflows. We also try to highlight some ad hoc workflows and agent assignment and how we can forward the work items. Obviously this would be one of the troubleshooting techniques, as I said, but there are some tools by default provided by SAP. So I just tried to take you through all the transactions and steps that are involved in forwarding the work item. We also try to highlight, as I said already, this workflow wizards, about workflow wizards, not only about workflow wizards, but when we talk about event mechanism, so there could be n number of events that can be raised and triggered within the SAP system during the business process. So how we can make use of this event mechanism and how we can validate and make any one of the workflows as a receiver by making use of check and receiver function modules that are associated with the events of SAP workflow. So even check function modules and receiver function module, this plays a very important role in deciding what workflow or in which way you want to handle the different events that are raised or fired within the SAP system. That would be the end of the first part. As you can see that I have just tried to provide you the whole information about what we expect and what are the prerequisites that you can consider as a participant, what you should have and what you can expect from the course. And I just tried to make you understand what are the different course contents that we are going to discuss within the whole training program. In the second part of this SAP workflow demo program, or it can be an introduction of your SAP workflow, basically what we are going to look at is understand what a business process is and how and what are the different reasons or why do we have to redefine a business process by using workflows, and what could be the factors that many organizations decide to go with the workflows on, based on what factors stakeholders or the process owners may decide to make use of workflows within the business, and what is the role if once they really started using the workflows, then how how can your workflow can adapt itself to the existing business process, and why we call the workflow execution process as a people-centric process, because as I said, because whenever we start using the workflows, we can consider this workflow as a part of your organization, and how this workflow can become a part of organization, and how it makes sure that whatever the people-centric process, whatever the process that for which there are some people are required to handle this process, so how it can engage them. So we'll also try to understand what is a people-centric processes. And then we'll try to look at some frequently used terms. Then finally I would like to conclude by giving you a simple demo on which I would be trying to make use of some WebDyn Pro applications, through which I'll try to start a workflow in the backend system by passing some values from your WebDyn Pro application to your workflow, and then later I would like to conclude this with an and note. So moving ahead, what actually a business process is. So before we start talking more about SAP workflow and we start understanding what a workflow is and why we have to use workflow and what are the different features and possibilities and mechanisms that we can use a workflow in order to build a business process for automation, the first primary thing that we are supposed to understand is what a business process is. So a business process you can consist of a sequence of logically related steps. If I have to just say in a very layman terms, I would say that a business process can be considered as a sequence of steps and basically this process is this process would be initiated basically to serve a request or to serve a service or to serve a validation. So it can be anything. Basically whenever you try to request something and you are expecting some result from the business, some by the response for that request. So obviously during this request in between this request and response, whatever the steps or whatever the activities that you are going to perform to get the response and give it back to the requester, so this all steps can be logically grouped together. And obviously whenever you send a request and you get a response, so whatever the activities that you handle or process between these request response, in that case these are logically related to each other. So obviously a business process is also considered in the same way. So but however if we talk more precisely from the terms of SAP or from business point of view, a business process can be considered as a creation of material, a creation of sales order, a creation of quotation order, raising an invoice, or applying a leave request, or traveling or trying to raise a claims for your travel. And it can be more than that. If you talk about from CRM perspective, it can be warehouse management. What is the total stock that is available in a specific plant. So in that case if you're just trying to get the information, what is the total number of requests and what is the total number of stock that is available in any warehouse or in any location. So obviously these all are they're considered as different business processes. But however when we talk about a specific business process, it should be obviously it is not just about it just goes on and you just don't have it has infinite number of steps to get a response. It is not like that. A business process should be a predefined and definite. So at any point of time when you start any transaction, assume that a business process is a kind of transaction, and then if you start a transaction, obviously it should end with at some point of time. So obviously whenever we talk about business process, so the first thing, or whenever we talk about workflow, the first thing what we are trying to do with the workflow is that we are trying to redefine, or we're trying to build a copy, or we are trying to implement the business process within the workflow development. Or you can or in other words, you can also say that we are trying to adapt workflows to understand what the existing SAP business system or SAP system is running. So that is what you have. So as you can see the definition over here, that a business process or a business method is a collection of related and structured activities of tasks. A task is nothing but a group specific activity which you can perform, and that produces a specific service or a result that can produce a specific desired result, or it can also be unexpected results also. And as I said, in between the request and response, whatever the activities that you handle, all can be considered as your logically related steps. So it is often can be visualized as a flow chart. So as I said, whenever you try to start raising a quotation, or to give you a very simple example, like if at all you are trying to book a cab by using some cab service or taxi provider, so obviously what you just try to do is that you just try to make him some calls, and you just try to define the whole process. So you can just visualize it as a flow chart, and within this process you may come across a situation, or there may be some points where we need some kind of manual intervention, and people has to validate the request, and based on the validation and the result of the validations, the request might be served or it can be rejected also. So that is what a business process is. Now if I have to give you an example how you can consider and how you can treat business processes, as I said, as you can see over here, that the business process, whatever that I was talking on the slide, is about taxi order process. So if I have to just give you a very simple example which is nowhere concerned or related to your SAP business system or SAP business processes, so I would say that this is a very simple example. So what you are trying to do is that a customer tries to register a request either by through making a phone call or through online. So once he submits his request, this request has to be sent to the responsible department where they admin or the administrative office of the taxi order process. So what is this actually? Whole process is about creating a cab, booking a cab. So now a customer and the service provider are the two end-to-end points which has to be done. So customer is requesting something and your taxi providers has to respond something to the customer request. So whatever the steps that we are going to perform in between to provide the response to the customer or the requester, that those are nothing but the different steps that are involved within the business process, and these steps are may logically be related to each other. Now as I said, once you submit the request, the customer might just fill up the form and he just submits a request. So this submitted form will be received by the administrative office. Now how does it how actually it is getting received, or how we are trying to send this filled form to the administrative office is not in the scope, but just understand that we have just sent this form through some online to the administrative office. Now as soon as the administrative office receives, so the administrative office can have multiple departments. Again, within these multiple departments, who are the right people or which is the right department to handle this particular customer request? Again, this request has to be sent to that respective department, and within that department, again, let's assume that if he's trying to book pick and drops taxi service, then obviously it should go to the pick and drop department. If he's trying to book service for for shifting your home, or for changing your house, or for transporting your logistics, so again it would go to the some other department. Basically what we are trying to do is that once if a customer tries to submit a taxi request, taxi booking request, so obviously it has to be sent to the pick and drop department. So now within this pick and drop department, again we can have different people who are again responsible with the regional areas or the local areas. Now again this request has to be sent to that respective people or the place unit where actually they will be having a clear picture of whether they will be able to provide a request or not. So see, if I have to now you are able to understand that it is not just about submitting the form and getting the response. It is something like it has to reach the administrative office, and within the administrative office again you have to decide the flow, whether to which particular department it has to go, whether it has to go to the logistics department or it has to go to pick and drop department. And within that pick and drop department or logistic department, again you are supposed to decide whether it has to go to a regional or a local center, or and within that again you have to identify the right people. So until unless it reaches to the right person, the request, customer can't expect, or customer won't be able to receive any kind of response from the taxi provider. So what happens is, now as soon as this respective authorized person within the regional office or the local center who receives this request, he'll be validating whether the form, whatever the customer has submitted, again based on the request of the customer, whether on what date and time he is actually looking for the cab or pick and drop. So maybe based on the timings he might be able to give or provide him a cab, or allocate him a cab, or if there is no availability of any taxis or cabs, then in that case what we do is that he might be responding back to the requester saying that we were not able to provide a cab on so and so time. But at the same time, again there is also a possibility that he can suggest some other timings for his pick and drop, maybe after 20 minutes or before 20 minutes. So in that way you have different possibilities in between handling between your request and response. So obviously, in order to define this whole business process in workflow, now as I said, we were trying to come across different units, different organizational, different sectors within the whole request. So in order to incorporate this whole kind of business process in workflow and automate the process of sending document to the administrative office, and not only just to sending the documents to the administrative office, but also to determine the flow of your organizational structure, or to which department this document has to flow, whether it has to flow to your pick and drop or it has to flow to your logistics. So these all activities are actually will be able to adaptable or can be defined within your business workflow. So that is what the reason I said, like, before we are trying to develop any workflow, the first and foremost important thing that we have to be very much clear about is that what is that business process that we are trying to or looking for defining or build within the workflow. So that is what you can consider it as a business process. And now the reasons why do we redefine a business process, and people, as I said, there could be n number of reasons, but these are some of the major factors or attributes that I would consider in order to that I would say that these could be some of the prominent factors that why organizations and firms choose to go with workflows in making their existing business process to use workflows. So one is that the speed, and to make a good to, as I said, to respond to the customer quickly, they need to process the customer request as much within very within a specified amount of time. And in order to respond to the customer, again he has to reach, or whatever the information that that he needs, has to get the whole information within his within his desk or within his workstation. So obviously one important thing is, when I talk about speed, the way in which it just tries to flow the data by determining the respective flow of the two different flows, whether it can pick and drop or logistics. And as soon as it just met, so within the time he'll be able to, the authorized person will be able to validate the whole information, and within the time he'll be able to respond to the requester. And next thing is the performance. Now when you try to compare if there are if you assume that the same process, whatever that we were talking earlier, if it is taking 2 days or 1 day of time to respond to customer about whether we will be able to allocate a cab or not, or will he be able to use the services whatever the taxi provider services are giving. So if it is taking long time, and the performance obviously decreases. So obviously this could be one of the reason that people on the within the business process, most of the times workflow, they would like to go ahead and include the workflows, or make workflows as part of their business process. And again, next thing is monitoring is one more important factor, which I would say that whenever some business process are getting executed, some people are really involved in understanding what is happening with the business process, or what is happening with the data, whatever that is trying to be processed or manipulated within the process or within the steps of the business process. And also steward activities. So there could be some steward activities like your data validation, and in that case also they don't want to actually manually, sometimes they feel that they are not able to validate it, but if they wanted to automatically if a workflow system itself wanted to determine and process all the validation process, then they also look for this workflow implementation within the existing business process. And next to that, they also look for auditing information. So whenever they want to keep a track and give information, auditing information, then obviously they would be interested in going and understanding the implementing the workflows within the business process. The cost factor is again one more important thing, because if it is taking long time and you're losing the valuable resources and customers, then obviously your cost factor increases. So instead of keeping the business process to be executed for such a long time by consuming so many other resources, So instead of that, they also consider this one of the factors to reduce the cost. And also one important thing is that within the organization, as a part of organization, you are trying to make sure that you are trying to engage the people. So workflow, as I said, workflow can be considered as a part of your organizational data or organizational structure. So obviously when you make workflow as a part of your organizational hierarchy or structure, so it will be really helpful to engage people. So that is how actually we make use of this, or these could be some of the reasons that why actually some organizations look at in redefining a business process. Now, what could be the role, or what kind of impacts actually we can see when we try to actually start adapting workflows, or we really go ahead and decided that okay, fine, let's start building workflows and let's make use of workflows within the existing business process. So how do you define it? So basically SAP business workflow itself, basically it, as I said, the business process itself can be built or defined within the SAP workflow. And it is not just about creating some non-existing business process within the SAP system. It is also something like there are so many workflows which are already pre-built within the standard business processes. These business process is not very much, cannot be a very simple business process, but these can also be having some complex business process, like creating a material master. And whenever we are trying to create a material master, as I said, if there are different departments are involved in validating and assigning, or making sure that these departments will be making sure that the material whatever that is about to get created within the system has a reliable and consistent data, so that basically that is what the role is. So by default, if I have to say that what could be the role of SAP workflow in the business process, is that the main important role of the workflow in the business process is that you're making workflow to understand the existing business process, and you are adapting and you are tweaking your existing business process to make sure that it meets all the reasons whatever that we just spoke earlier, that it increases the it keeps a good performance, and it reduces the consuming time factor, it increases the speed, it makes people to engage. So that is what the you can basically understand that when you start really using the workflows in the existing business process, so these are the factors that actually gets affected. So SAP business workflow, maybe there could be a question that what kind of situations actually we should go and build a workflow. So I would say that SAP workflow is just not for a kind of automatic approval process. Maybe most of the times they might be having a perception that SAP workflow is just used for automation purpose, or getting approvals or rejections, or whenever you have a situation where some person has to approve some data. It is not just for that, it is more than that. It is actually you are trying to make engage people within the organization, and you are making workflows the work flow across your organization. And you're making sure that by using workflows, the work the person who are supposed to do, that means the right work is sent to the right people. Obviously that is one important thing that we will be looking in the business process, that whenever some person or a specific position is holding a specific position, and he's responsible to handle a set of activities, and the activities whatever he's responsible for, if you are trying to define within the workflow, and and the same workflow or the activities whatever he's responsible for, it has to be sent to the right person and the right time and the right place. So that is what we are trying to do by using SAP business workflows. And next to that, it is that as I said, when we talk about positions and the persons who are involved in the business process, again there could be a situation where we have to determine these persons, responsible persons, dynamically. So obviously your workflows are pretty much developed and designed in such a way that you will be able to use different mechanisms to identify the people across the organization, and you make sure that these workflows will pass and will send the work to the right person. So again, if I have to talk about errors and exceptions, or what kind of things it can do if there are some any errors occurs. So SAP business workflow is also built with to handle, or it has also the features of handling exceptions and errors within the existing business process. And it is not just to that it just simply handles the errors, but also you have different ways of starting the workflows and initiating the workflows. We have different mechanisms, because within the SAP system there can be n number of events that can be triggered. So obviously what you can just do is that whenever this event occurs within the system, you can make a workflow to listen to these events, and you can make sure that these workflow gets, or the workflows can behave as a receiver for the events that are triggered or fired within the SAP system. And as the system gets executed, you can just do all the checks, whatever that you want to do, or all the validations, or whatever the policies that you want to implement on the business object. You can just implement on the business object or the master data directly by using SAP workflows. So that is what I would like to say about your impact of the roles. But if I have to talk about what is this people-centric process or people-driven process, is that as I said in the previous example, that in the taxi order, taxi booking or taxi provider service example, I was trying to say that there are different people and different organizational units and different subcategories or different units, or so again every unit may consist of some 10 to 15 people. So how does this actually happen? So if in case you are trying to make sure that you are trying to define this whole organization structure in your SAP system, the way in which I try to present the business process of about booking a taxi cab. So if they have defined the whole organizational structure or hierarchy in the SAP system, and you can make use of this existing organizational system or hierarchy or structure, or in case if you would like to create a new org structure, you can just go ahead and create your new org structure, and you can make the workflows to be a part of your organizational structure. So that how do you assign it, or if some person is holding a position, and for that position there could be some set of common activities that has to be handled. Now every position can be holded, or the same position can be holded by different people. Now whenever you try to send these activities for this position, so irrespective of the people who are holding that position, they will be able to receive the the job or the activities whatever they are really responsible to handle. Now in case at times there could be a chance that the positions, the persons who are ever holding the positions might change, or they might resign, or they just quit the company, or they may just quit just leave the organization. So in that case, if some new employee or replaces the existing or the old employee, then in that case you don't have to worry about how do I determine this new person, because again the new person is again assigned to the same old position. So but what we are trying to do in the workflow is that we are making sure that this workflow is always this workflow always identifies the people whoever are assigned to this position. So in that way what you are trying to do is that irrespective of the changes whatever that you do for the positions or organizational unit, you have to define and design in such a way that your workflow doesn't fall into error state, and at the same time your workflow will be able to identify the right people who are really responsible to handle the activities and complete the whole business process. So that is the reason why we say it as a workflow is a people driven process or people centric process. And finally, I would like to talk something about the different terms that we come across in the development process of your workflow. Like the way in which we see in the current slide is that we frequently come across the term called work item. We frequently listen the term called as workflow. We frequently hear the term task. So I would like to discuss on each and everything, like what is a business workplace. That is the first important thing that I would like to say over here, is that as I was trying to say you in the previous from the last 20 or 30 minutes, that the work item has, the task has to be sent to the right person, the task has to be activated by the right person in right time. So what is this task, and where this task is, how this task will be sent to the person. So every user, whoever is assigned to, whoever is having a in the organization, as a part of organization, he'll be having a business workplace. So whatever the workflow activities, or whatever the activities that he's responsible for, all the activities are placed in his business workplace, and this business workplace is also called as SAP Inbox, right? So whatever the activities, or whatever the mails or the documents that he's responsible to receive, all the mails within the SAP system and org structure, he'll be able to receive everything, and the whole activities are placed in the business workplace or SAP Inbox. Now the tasks, whatever that we were talking, they are placed as work items. So the task and work item, they are nothing but an instance of your task, or the operation of your task is nothing but your work item. So work item is nothing but, in technical terms, it is it's a collection of 8 or 12 digits. I hope if I'm not wrong. So it's just an ID of, it's a numeric ID. Basically this numeric ID is nothing but the instance given to the task. So if it is a task, so that task is placed in his work item. So as soon as he executes the task, so he'll be able to open the transaction, or he'll be able to change the master data, he'll be able to delete the master data, or he'll be able to update some information that he's relevant for, or he'll be able to send emails back or respond to the emails. So everything, whatever the task that he's responsible for, everything is placed in the business workplace in the form of work items, or in the form of workflow tasks, right? So that is the important thing which I would like to say. What is a business workplace? A business workplace is a place, you call it as a SAP Inbox, the way in which you have your Gmail or Yahoo inbox. It is the same way, but it works within the boundaries and limitations of SAP. So whatever the transactions that, or whatever the documents or mails that we send within the SAP user to SAP user, they'll be placed in your SAP Inbox. And next to that is that your workflow, we usually call this as workflow, is nothing but your instance, or the runtime term that we use for workflow ID or workflow template. So workflow template is nothing but your definition of your business process, whereas workflow is your instance, or instance of your workflow ID or workflow template. So workflow and workflow ID, both are different. Workflow is nothing but the instance or runtime term used to represent your workflow execution. And the task is nothing but, as I said, a task can be very specific to one of the activities. A task can be creation of material, a task can be a deletion of material, a task can be creation of a sales order, a task can be changing a customer, so it can be so many tasks. So every task is having a meaningful and specific operations that it can perform. So every single step, as I said, when you're trying to perform, or within a business process, when you try to request something, and before responding, you have to come across so many number of steps. So each step can be considered as a single task. And we also have a business object repository, or we also hear the term called BOR. So what is this BOR? A BOR is nothing but a place where you have all the business object types. So the business object types, these are the standard, these are the business, or these are the types, or these are the place where actually the whole implementation logic, that whatever that workflow system requires in order to handle the operations and everything, those all things are defined within your business object types. And later what you're trying to do is that you will make use of this business object types within the workflow ID or workflow designing, or in the workflow development process. And then in that way you will be able to supply the required source code, whatever that is really necessary by the workflow or for the workflow system. So where we actually implement the whole implementation logic of the logic whatever that is required by the workflow system in order to handle the business process is defined inside your business object types of BOR, right? Like as I said, every business object type can contain methods, and it can call, and each method can call transactions and functions, and it can have its own programs. It can also call some external programs and even desktop applications also. As a task, you can see that you have a dialog task and a background task. A task, as I said, if at all you're trying to execute, whenever you're trying to send to some user's inbox, then it would be obviously a dialog task. Whenever you're not trying to send a task to user's inbox or a business workplace, but workflow system itself executing that particular task, so it is called as a background task. So whenever a background task is executed by, all the background tasks are executed by the workflow system. All the dialog tasks should be sent to users inbox or SAP inbox, so that the user will take appropriate action on the activity that he is responsible for, right? So how do you define background task, and how do you define a dialog step or a background step within the workflow? Again, based on the task whatever that you create, you associate or you define that as in the workflow template or workflow design, and then you start making use of it. So these are some frequently used terms that you come across, and in fact as I said, you'll also come to hear about agent assignment. Agent assignment is nothing but who are the responsible agents, or who are the excluded agents, or who are possible agents of a specific dialog step or a dialog task. So that is what these are some frequently used terms that you can come across in the workflow development process. But as we go on in understanding more about workflows in the sessions, you will be able to get more clear picture of what actually each work item ID is, what a workflow is, what a workflow template is, how does a workflow template looks like, and what a task is, and what is the difference between a background and dialog task, and how many types of business object types we have, and what is a business class, and how we can make use of organizational management in associating or mapping workflows within the organizational data or organizational structure. So, let me take you through before taking through the demo, what I would like to talk is that how we can adapt. I've already discussed this because we were trying to understand from the workflow uses the existing transactions. As I said, that there are so many predefined workflows which are inbuilt, provided by the SAP system, and these predefined workflows are already assigned and defined within the standard transactions. And if in case you are looking to create your own workflows, even you have a possibility to change the standard workflow and create or replace the standard workflow provided by the SAP system, and you can just plug in your workflow whatever that you have created for the purpose. And organizational management data, as I said, we were trying to discuss that organizational since workflows are considered or treated as a part of organizational data, then obviously whatever the individual activities, I was just trying to make you understand that whenever someone tries to replace a position or holds a position, so in that case how does the workflow behave? So it doesn't make any big difference. It's because we are trying to identify the people based on the position, but not on the person ID or the employee number. So obviously your workflows are very adaptable, and they are suitable to the they can accustom themselves based on the customizations and configurations that you handle and perform for the workflow during the development process. So let me take you through the demo. As I said, in this demo we are going to look at how we can initiate workflows from a WebDynPro application. So as you can see that I have created a sample WebDynPro application for creating a flight booking. So in this I have created a WebDynPro application, and then I've just implemented this application on a floor plan manager. So basically we are not just trying to integrate, or we are not just trying to look at something the application which is just a simple WebDynPro for a web application. Rather we are just trying to create a FPM application, and we are trying to integrate workflows into this application. Now as soon as the scenario is something like, as soon as I create booking, what I would like to show is that a workflow gets created in the backend system, and a work item or a kind of work item will be sent to the user inbox. I would like to show how does a work item look like, and the frequently used terms, whatever that I was talking about, like what is a work item, what is a task. I would like to give you a very high level understanding, or how does it look like, what a task is, what a work item is, and how does a workflow looks like. Okay, so what I would like to do is, like, as soon as I click on create booking, so I would like to initiate the workflow, and I would like to create a flight booking. So that is what the whole simple demo, but gives you a good things of good things, good look, or maybe it just tries to give you a overall view of what are the things that we are going to look at, the frequently used terms. And also I would like to give you a very high level understanding, or where we actually try to enable the workflow environment within the SAP system, before I conclude giving a end note. So this is what I would like to show. So this is what I was talking, in fact, in the demo, before I was trying to start the session, giving the introduction of what a workflow is, that right. So I've just tried to started creating including airline ID and connection number, and let's say I have a flight booking on so and so date with some customer number. I already have some information, so that is the reason I'm just trying to make use of it. And I say why, and he's a smoker, and let's say put it as luggage as 50 and kg, and let it make it as demo for workflow. So the passenger name is demo for workflow, and he's just trying to look to create a booking for American Airlines for the connection flight number on 17 on for so and so date, was the customer number. So as soon as I just try to click on this create booking, so in the back end our workflow gets triggered. So as soon as I just click on create booking, a kind of confirmation message, okay, it seems the value is not valid. So that is what the validations that we can just perform on the application level itself. So if I just click on create booking, so the process has been initiated successfully, so it means the workflow got triggered successfully in the backend. So now let's go to the backend system and try to understand how the frequently used terms which I was trying to mention, and how we can identify, or how we can see by using what resources or tools we can see, or we can identify that whether a workflow has been triggered or not. And then we'll also look at a very high level of understanding how does a runtime value look like, and what a graphical log is, and how a technical workflow log looks like, and what is the transaction to access these log files, and where we can see this, and what is inbox, what is business workflows, how does it look like, and where we have to access this. So let me just take you back to the system in the backend. Right, so in the backend system, the first place, before, as I was trying to start the frequently used terms with the business workplace, so I would like you to first show you what a business workplace is. So in order to access business workplace, you can just log into the system and click on Control F12, or click on the icon which is available on the application toolbar of the initial screen, or SAP Easy Access screen, or you have a transaction called SBWP. So you can make use of this transaction even if you want to navigate to your SAP Business Workplace. So SBWP stands for SAP Business Workplace, and that is a transaction which you can use to navigate to SAP Inbox or SAP Business Workplace, or you can make use of shortcut Control F12 to navigate to SAP Inbox. So just double click on SBWP and you will be able to navigate, or it is something like you're able to see your inbox. So this is how actually it looks like. So you have different features over here. You can maintain substitution, you can maintain automatic forwarding, you can maintain, or you can just look at what are some shared folders. You can have your own way of setting your inbox over here, and within the inbox you will be able to find how many unread documents are placed in your inbox, how many read documents are there in your inbox, how many workflows, or how many workflows that are placed in your inbox. Workflows, as I said, it is nothing but the instance of your workflow. And as you can see that there are some different work items that are placed. So there are different tasks that are placed in the inbox as a work item. So if you just try to recollect the picture which I was trying to show you in the frequently used terminology, so every task is placed as, every dialog step is placed as a work item in the user's inbox. So these are the list of items whatever that you are able to see in the inbox or SAP Business Workplace are nothing but the work items. A work item is nothing but a technical ID given to your task that is placed in your inbox. So what is the task which is placed as soon as I just click on create booking? So the task is that whatever the information that is passed to a user, so workflow got triggered, and the user and workflow was able to identify the whole organizational structure. By using the whole organizational structure, it may be using the whole organizational structure to identify the right agent or actor, or the responsible agent or responsible person. So agent or actor is nothing but the same. We call them as responsible people who are supposed to execute the task or perform the operation. So in workflow terms, we call them as agents or actors or responsible agents. Right, so this task, as soon as the end user clicks on create booking, the whole information is passed to your backend system from your WebDynpro application, and in the backend system a workflow has been initiated again. To initiate workflows from a WebDynpro application to your in the backend system, you have different mechanisms. You have event mechanism, you can start workflows directly, you have change document mechanism, and you have even you can make use of different ways, integrate workflows. As I was trying to say, you can integrate workflows in different applications. So basically, if I have to talk precisely, there are 3 ways to start from ABAP side: by using event mechanism, by directly starting workflows, or manually, or by using some change document objects. So through one of the means, I just try to initiate the workflow as soon as I click on, or the end user clicks on create booking. So the whole information is passed to the workflow, and then the workflow, when the workflow template, workflow is nothing but the instance of the design or the business process, whatever that you have defined or built within the workflow. So the workflow template. So as soon as you start your workflow template or workflow ID, a workflow gets generated, a workflow gets initiated. So the tasks, the different steps, the operations, as I was trying to mention you by giving you an example of taxi provider service, which will have where customer tries to request some for information, and response from the organization or the administrative office will be sent to the customer. So there are different steps involved in this process. So from the step of submitting a request till the point of confirming the status or the request, confirming the status of the request to the customer, there are n different number of steps. So you can just define these whole number of steps, individual steps within the workflow, and then you can make use of these workflows to automate this whole process of sending notifications to the customer or the requester or the initiator. And in case if he's not able to, if he, in either cases, either if the cab is allocated or if cab is not allocated to him, either cases, you can just send him a notification to the requester saying that on so and so date, on so and so time, the service is not available. So in that process, we just try to understand business process and workflow. So now, as I said, that in the frequently used terms, as you can see that the work item is placed in the user's inbox, and as soon as he just tries to execute, the flight booking gets executed. I mean a flight booking. So the responsible agent is what he's supposed to do. As soon as he executes the work item or the task, the work item for which he is responsible for maintaining the flight booking. So as soon as he executes it, a flight booking gets created within the system. But before that, before I execute the work item, I would like to show you whether the workflow has been triggered or not. So to do that, we have different possible transactions. One is SWI1 and the other one is SWIA, which is basically called as workflow administration transaction. Since I would recommend you, instead of making use of SWIA, because in the production system we don't have much access to this transaction. So most probably you can make use of SWI1 transaction to get an access to the list of workflows that are getting generated within the system. So just execute this report and just choose the top level work items. So as soon as you just click on this report and execute top level work items, so you can see there are different workflow instances that has been generated. But irrespective of what workflow instances, the thing is that we are supposed to understand the runtime values, whatever the values that we just passed, whether we are able to get it or not. So as you can see that I have created so many container elements, and container elements are nothing but your data objects in your normal ABAP reports or programs. The way in which we just try to create data objects in the normal ABAP reports and programs, in the same way we call them as container elements. So there are different containers again within the workflow development process. You have workflow container, method container, task container, event container, rule container. So there are different kinds of containers available within the workflow development process. So each container is nothing but a kind of a bucket where you store and save all your runtime values and data objects. So whatever the manipulations that you want to handle within the runtime process of workflow, so all your interim values, intermediate values, or the manipulations, whatever that you perform on the container elements, can be stored in the container elements. Okay, so the values, whatever that I just tried to pass, all the values came over here. That 2218 demo workflow, passenger name is demo for workflow. That is what I've just tried to pass from application. And this is how you can actually get a glimpse of what are the runtime values that I was actually able to submit, pass the data from a WebDynPro application to the workflow, which is actually located or developed in the backend system. And I was able to update one of the container standard, one of the container elements or the data objects that is available in the workflow, and I was successfully able to pass the whole information from the application to the workflow. So upon I received the application, what has happened is that it was just trying to process or manipulate some steps. So there are some interim steps within the before the work item is placed in the user's inbox. So how do you identify it? So in order to identify whether into which user or where is actually it is placed, so what you can do is that you can just click on the icon, display workflow log or shift F8, and then what you can just do is that as soon as it will take you to the next screen, in which you will be able to see if it is a dialog step, all the dialog steps are placed in the user's SAP Business Workplace. If it is a background step, then it is handled by your workflow system by making some TRFC calls to the logical system that will be designed or enabled while performing your workflow customization. So that is nothing but when you start enabling the workflow environment within the R3 system, all the background process will be executed on your logical system of logical system of workflow, right? So what happens is all the background process will be executed by the workflow user or the workflow system, and all the foreground activities or all the steps for which, or all the tasks for which a user intervention or user interaction is responsible, you will send them to the SAP Business Workplace. And the work items or the tasks which we send to users Business Workplace are called as dialog steps, or a foreground activity, or foreground steps. And the steps which are executed by the workflow system are called as background activities or background tasks. So the task, there could be some tasks, for example, let's say you want to validate some information of the master data object which is stored in some set of tables, for which we don't require any user interaction, but we just require the instance of the business object. So as soon as you get the instance of the business object, the workflow system will try to gather the attributes of the business object and try to validate against the set of configurations that you have maintained in the tables. So for this we don't require a user interaction. So it can be this can be even done with the the workflow system. And for that sake, what you do is you create a background task for which the workflow user or the workflow system is responsible to handle that task. And for all the tasks, other tasks, foreground activities, we send it to the user. Now, what are agents? Agents, as I said, the responsible people. In this case, the agent is nothing but user 6, which is nothing but the inbox, which I just tried to show you right now, that it is a user 6 inbox. So it will be placed in the user 6 inbox. So it can have multiple users. You can have not just one user, you can have multiple users. And in case it is sent to multiple users, the same task or the dialog step is available, or the same work item is available in all the users inbox, right? So in that way, work items can be sent to your SAP Business Workplace. Workflow agents, so basically who are all the people or who are all the agents involved in the execution process of this whole workflow, entire workflow. So user 6 is one, and workflow system is one. So what are all the activities or tasks that are executed by the workflow system user are all the background jobs that are executed by the system. So these are some steps which are executed by the workflow system, and these are some activities that a user can execute. So what are the different workflow objects that are involved? So here we are trying to make use of some OO workflows. So it is not just that business object types. So as I said, business object types are the place where we try to make sure the whole implementation source code is available to be used by the workflow system. So for instance, as I was trying to say, that if you want to validate your business object instance or business object against some set of customizations that you have maintained in some table, so where do you write this whole piece of source code or logic? So you will be writing, or you will be implementing this whole source code logic development in the business object type within the methods of the business object type. And later what you do is, like within the workflow, you will call, or you may reuse these methods that are developed in the business object type, and you pass the information to these methods and you get the result of the validation. So in the same way, you can make use of even your classes or the business classes, whatever that you build within the class builder. So again, there are some prerequisites that has to be met in order to make sure if any class is used within the workflow development process. So what are all the different business object types or workflow objects that are used within this execution process? A list of whole business object tasks or instances you will be able to find under this workflow view objects, and who are all the agents that are involved in the execution process, and what are all the different steps that are executed till now, that you can see under your workflow log. So where do you see this whole information? You have to execute a report or transaction SWI1 and choose the top level work items on the initial screen, and then just choose the respective row and click on the display workflow log. So once you click on this display workflow log, you will be able to see the list of the workflow log. And in fact, if you want to look at the graphical log, you are supposed to click on the icon graphical workflow log, and you will be able to see the graphical log. So this is how your workflow looks like. So what this workflow is doing is, once it receives the whole information, it is just trying to convert the SBook information into some compatible parameter interface in which we are just trying to call or pass this converted information into some BAPIs, which is nothing but which is called inside the step generate FBooking. So what is the first task is that the first background activity which was executed by the workflow system is converting the FBook or SBook standard structure into some other interface, or converting that whole piece of information into a compatible interface parameter that is used by BAPI. Okay, and once it gets the result back, once the conversion is successfully done, so it just imports the whole information into your workflow again, and after that the next step is just send the information to create the BAPI. So for this again we require a user interaction. So what it does is, like, we are just sending it to user inbox. The next step is, or the next task is that we are just trying to create a flight booking. So as soon as he clicks on work item that is available, or the task that is available in SAP Business Workplace, this is what I was talking about. So this task gets executed. So once he executes and flight booking gets created successfully, a mail is sent to the initiator. So we are using a mail step again. So for more information, obviously you're supposed to look at some other details of like how do we build this whole piece of process, where do we build. Again, we make use of workflow builder tools, and there are different steps that we can make use of it. Okay, and so in this process we started looking at tasks. So what is the request here is to create a booking, and what is the response is a successful booking ID that will be sent to the end user, whoever has submitted for create booking. So that is what. So in between, what are the different tasks, or what are the different steps that I'm trying to perform is, first, as soon as he submits, I'm just trying to convert the whole standard structure into a interface which is compatible to BAPI. And next step is that I'm sending this information to the BAPI as a foreground step, so that the user confirms it and gets created. So upon successful creation, I'm sending a notification to the end user, whoever submitted on it. So in this way, in this process, I was just trying to even determine the users and the flow of the work, who has to whom I have to send this create or generate booking step. Everything has been done dynamically at the runtime. And at the same time, I would also like to show you that this is how actually a graphical workflow logs looks like. So the execution process has been started from condition, and then it just went crossed your background step, and then it is ready in the user's inbox. Right, so this is how your graphical workflow logs looks like. And if I have to show you technical workflow log, navigate to the same screen and click on list of technical workflow log, and here is a place where you can see some information about the work item ID, which I was talking about. As I was trying to say you, it's a collection, it's a numeric digit. So this is how your work item ID looks like. So as you can see, this is my work item ID, and the same work item ID 1222933 is actually placed in user's inbox. If in case you are trying to look at the agents, again, just right click on the dialog step and click on display agent. So you will be able to see the list of agents, responsible agents, possible agents, and excluded agents. So agents are nothing but the person or the responsible person who is supposed to execute the activity that is placed, that he is responsible to execute. So once I do this, so I'll be able to execute it, and I'll be able to create a notification. And to navigate to business workplace, again, it is possible. So SAP business workplace, SBWP. So execute it directly from your technical workflow log and execute this method. So as soon as you execute, so again, it is just giving you a kind of confirmation that this work item has to be completed explicitly. So do you want to complete the work item? So are you sure that the flight booking has been done? So if you just say complete work item, then the work item gets completed and it has disappeared. And you can see now, earlier it was in process, and now it has been completed. So a flight booking has been created 7822, and the information whatever that we are looking for of sending a notification, so it has been done. So if you just look at this technical workflow log, this is your work item ID and what is the task ID that it is used for. So if you just look at the task ID properties again, so all you have to just look at like what is that method it is using and what is the business object type it is using. So if you look at the business object type, again, it just tries to show you that this is the business object type and this is the method which it is using to convert the standard SBook structure into your BAPI, the interface which is compatible to create flight booking by using BAPI. So this is your background step which is getting executed by the workflow system, and the next step is one more task ID, which is again calling your business class, or the class that is we are using it over here, and create from data, which is basically calling some BAPI over here. So we are just trying to convert that whole SBook information into booking data, and we are passing it to this BAPI. So once I get this information, again I'm trying to send an email notification, so which is nothing but, again, it is using some business object type, and it just tries to send an email notification based on the recipient whatever that I just configured. right? So that is how actually these are the different things that I just tried to show you what a workflow looks like, how a workflow looks like, what a step is, what a background step, what a dialog step is, and what a work item ID looks like, and what are the different properties, at least to an understanding how the code is available to your workflow, or how the workflow makes use of different standard task IDs or the steps. And I also try to show you how does a graphical log looks like, and what a technical workflow log is, how can we judge or understand our runtime values at the container level, what are the different containers. And I also tried to share you some piece of information about the different ways of initiating workflows, and either manually, directly, eventual, by making use of event mechanism, right? So this is how actually your workflow system, or the workflow execution process takes place. But before these all things happen, the first and foremost important thing that any workflow developer or any workflow consultant has to execute is to enable the workflow environment. And in order to enable workflow environment, I'm sure you have to execute SWU3 transaction. Basically in this transaction you try to perform the customizing workflow settings, all the customizing activities that are relevant in the context of runtime environment, from the context of definition environment, from the context of some other activities, like what are all the different workflows that has to be made available within the system. So there are different scenarios and use cases, and based on the scenario and situation, what kind of activities that you want to perform and enable, or what kind of customizations that has to be maintained within the system, all these things are actually available within your SWU3 transaction. So let me show you this transaction. Yeah, so this is how it looks like. So this is the place where we go ahead and maintain automatic the workflow customization. I was trying to say you that there are some activities that has to be done in order to maintain some runtime environment settings. There are some configurations that you have to maintain for definition environment. There are some additional settings and services for maintaining your web service, and how you can integrate, or how you can make sure that how your HR activities or HR objects that are involved in your workflow processing. And in case, as I said, like what are the different workflows that has to be enabled within the system, and how we can make use of guided processes within the workflow process. So guided processes, basically we talk about this is basically when we are trying to design your business process modeling within your BPCM within from Java stack. So obviously guided processes are anyways out of scope in this course, but yeah, on a whole, even if in case you are trying to understand and activate guided procedures also, so this is the place where you say that this is the gateway for the guided procedures. And there are some different operations and activities that has to be performed. And to know more, I would suggest you to continue the following the videos, continue following the next video. So we'll be able to look at each and every aspect and each and every operation in detail, how we can just do it. So but however, in order to activate the workflow environment within the any SAP R3 system, so you are supposed to enable and activate and execute this workflow customizing activity from SWU3 transaction. So on a whole, this is what I would like to show within the demo. I hope I made it pretty interesting in understanding and taking you through the different terms, and understanding you at least to an high level how does a workflow look like, and what is a task, what is a background task, what is a foreground task, and on what basis you define and place the work items in the inbox.